I remember that night like it was etched into my memory with fire. We'd been driving for hours on those twisting Appalachian back roads, the kind that seem to fold in on themselves, where the trees lean over like watchful guardians or predators. The sun had been fading fast, and by the time we passed the last sign of civilization, the world had turned the grayish hue of evening fog. My friends were tired, their voices low, trying to make small talk to shake off the creeping unease that seemed to settle over the car like a weight. The headlights cut narrow ribbons through the dark, bouncing off the rough asphalt and throwing long shadows into the towering pines and oaks that lined the road. Every bend made the forest feel tighter, the trees pressing closer, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the woods themselves were alive, listening to us, watching us. It was somewhere in that endless stretch of dark road that I noticed the turnoff. At first I thought I'd imagined it. The map hadn't shown any side roads there, and yet the dirt path was unmistakable. It was narrow, almost overgrown, but the soil looked fresh, like someone, or something, had been driving along it recently. I hesitated. There was a gnawing in my chest, that kind of instinctual warning that something was wrong, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. I could see the anxious glances from the back seat, but I forced a nervous laugh, insisting we just check it out. My friends muttered, half excited, half scared, but they followed anyway. The turnoff swallowed us quickly. The headlights barely reached past the first bend, and the trees seemed to close in immediately. There was no wind, yet the branches scraped together with a dry, grating sound that echoed like fingernails on a coffin lid. Somewhere deep in the shadows, a small animal scuttled, or maybe it was bigger. My heart thumped so hard I could almost hear it in the silence. Then we saw it, a shack, half hidden behind gnarled trees, its weathered boards gray and black with rot. Windows were broken and the roof sagged like a tired old man, yet it radiated a presence, a kind of quiet malice. The closer we drove, the heavier the air felt, like the forest itself was holding its breath. I don't know what drew me out of the car first. Maybe it was a sense of foolish bravery, or maybe the forest had already claimed my reason. The door was crooked on its hinges, groaning as I pushed it open. The smell hit me instantly, a mix of damp rot, mildew, and something faintly metallic, coppery, like blood left to rust. My friends hung back at the edge of the light, uneasy murmurs falling into the heavy silence. I stepped inside, my boots crunching on broken glass and wood splinters. Every step echoed, each one seeming louder than the last. The floorboards were unstable. Some sagged alarmingly, threatening to give way, and then I heard it, the faint, unmistakable sound of movement above us. Scratching, dragging, something skittering across the upper floor. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. My friends whispered my name, panic edging their voices, urging me back. I wanted to leave, to turn and run, but something forced me to look up. Shadows moved on the walls above, stretching unnaturally, as if they had a life of their own. The front door slammed with a force that rattled the shack, and my friends screamed. That sound, it was more than the wind. It was deliberate, like a warning. My chest tightened and a cold sweat soaked the back of my neck. I realized in that moment that we were not alone. Whatever had been up there was aware of us, and it had made itself known. Panic overtook caution. We scrambled back to the car, stumbling over roots and loose rocks, the darkness suddenly suffocating. Every snap of a twig sounded like footsteps pursuing us, and I could feel a presence lingering just beyond the cone of our headlights. We piled into the car, doors slamming, and I fumbled with the keys, shaking. As we tore back onto the main road, hearts hammering in unison, I kept looking into the rearview mirror. The shack receded behind us, but for a fleeting moment I saw someone, or something, standing at the edge of the road, framed in the shadows, watching. And then it was gone. The rest of the drive was a blur. Every noise, the rustle of the trees, the wind through the hollows, the sound of our own breathing, felt amplified, as if the forest itself were mocking us. We didn't speak, not really, each of us lost in our private terror, replaying the images of the shack and the shadows over and over. I kept glancing into the side mirrors, half expecting to see a figure running alongside us, keeping pace with the car. Every time the headlights caught a bend in the road or a hollow between trees, I expected it to appear again. It never did, not physically, but the sensation of being watched stayed with us, climbing into the car like a living thing. By the time we reached the next town, The adrenaline had dulled enough for conversation, but the unease never left. My friends tried to laugh it off, calling it imagination, tired eyes, or shadows playing tricks. I wanted to believe them, I really did, but a part of me knew better. That shack, that forest, that oppressive presence, whatever it was, had marked us. I dreamt of it for weeks afterward. In those dreams, the shadows were thicker, darker, sometimes reaching into the car or standing at the side of the road, waiting. I would wake in a cold sweat, heart racing, haunted by the sound of the floorboards creaking, the door slamming and the soft scuttling movement above. Even now, when I drive those roads in daylight, I can feel the turnoff there, hidden behind the trees waiting. Sometimes I swear I catch the edge of a shadow flickering between the trunks, just out of reach of the sunlight. I don't tell many people about it. They wouldn't understand, and frankly, I don't think I fully understand it myself. What I do know is that some places in the Appalachians are not meant for wandering. They have a memory, a presence that lingers long after you leave. And the midnight turnoff, well, it remembered us. I can still feel eyes on me when I close my eyes at night, and a quiet, unyielding dread presses on my chest, reminding me that some roads, some shacks, some shadows are better left alone. The forest keeps its secrets, and sometimes if you are foolish enough to drive its back roads after dark, it makes sure you remember that you are never truly alone. The fog came fast that night, rolling in like a tide from nowhere, swallowing the road and the trees in one thick gray wall. I had been driving alone for what felt like hours, the headlights barely cutting through the haze. Every mile stretched out longer than the last, the bends in the road twisting the world into strange shapes, and I could feel my pulse quicken with every shadow that loomed too close. The smell of wet earth and decaying leaves was sharp and clung to the car, mingling with the nervous sweat on my skin. My hands gripped the wheel tightly, knuckles white, because in that kind of fog, you're never just alone with the road, you're alone with whatever else waits in it. At first, it was just shapes in the gray, the black silhouettes of trees that leaned in over the road as if to whisper warnings. Then I saw it, a figure standing in the middle of the lane, just beyond the reach of my headlights. I slammed on the brakes, heart hammering, and the car skidded slightly on the damp asphalt. I leaned forward, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but the figure vanished. It didn't move into the trees, it didn't run, it simply ceased to exist, leaving only the empty, fog-filled road behind me. My stomach turned cold, and I swallowed hard, trying to convince myself that it was my mind playing tricks, exhaustion making shadows crawl. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the truth. I continued slowly, every nerve on edge, when my headlights caught something else. Tire tracks, veering sharply off the asphalt and into the trees. At first I thought someone had made a wrong turn, but then I realized they weren't just veering. They ran alongside the road, weaving through the forest, as if something had walked the road with me, unseen. I felt my chest tighten, a panic that I couldn't explain, but I turned the car and followed the tracks. They led me to a small clearing where the fog seemed almost alive, pulsing with an unnatural rhythm that matched the beat of my heart. The air was heavy, damp, and impossible to breathe fully, each inhale tasting like wet soil and distant rot. In the center of the clearing was an old swing set. Rusted chains creaked and groaned, and the seats swayed gently despite the lack of wind. I froze, staring at it, feeling eyes on me from somewhere in the surrounding forest. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, yet my feet remained planted, my body rooted in fear and fascination. Something moved just at the edge of the fog, a shadow that shifted too quickly to be human, too deliberate to be a trick of the light. I could feel it observing, waiting, and for the first time that night, I knew I wasn't alone. My hands shook on the wheel, and I realized the forest wasn't just a backdrop. It was alive with quiet threats, with entities that blended seamlessly into the gray, watching, waiting. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps someone was playing a cruel joke, or maybe it was just the wind shifting the fog in strange ways, but every explanation rang hollow. The figure, or whatever it was, didn't feel like a mistake, and the air around the clearing was charged with an energy that was wrong. I could hear something moving behind the trees, soft crunches of leaves and sticks that didn't belong to any deer or small animal I knew. My skin prickled, every hair standing on end. I pressed my foot to the accelerator and drove off, the tires crunching on the gravel edge of the clearing, every nerve screaming. As I sped down the road, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. For a moment I thought I saw it, a figure standing just at the edge of the road, half shrouded by fog, its shape impossibly thin, elongated in the dim light. It didn't move, but I felt it there, and the knowledge that it could vanish at any moment made my stomach knot with dread. The headlights cut through the mist, but nothing else emerged from it, and I tried to convince myself that I had imagined the silhouette. Yet the oppressive feeling of being watched remained, a lingering awareness that someone, or something, had walked this road alongside me, unseen, and had not yet let me go. The rest of the drive was a blur of tense focus and nervous glances into the fog. Each bend in the road seemed to twist the world unnaturally. Trees leaned closer, shadows deepened, and the occasional snap of a branch sounded deliberate, like the echo of footsteps following just behind. I felt the weight of the forest pressing in from all sides, not hostile in a shout, but in a quiet, suffocating presence that made the skin crawl and the chest tighten. I imagined countless eyes in the fog, and even when there was nothing to see, I could feel them. The road stretched endlessly, turning on itself, folding in ways that should not have been possible. My heart refused to settle, every nerve alive with the sense that any second the figure could reappear, or worse, that something new could emerge from the fog. By the time I reached the next stretch of clear road, the tension had eased slightly, but the memory of that clearing stayed like a shadow in my mind. The swing set, motionless now, its chains eerily still, haunted me. The fog eventually thinned, revealing familiar landmarks, but the forest had already marked me. Even hours later, when I parked at my friend's house and stepped out into the relative safety of streetlights and pavement, I could feel it, an invisible weight, the knowledge that the forest and the fog had not finished with me. I tried to tell myself it was imagination, stress, isolation, but I knew it was more. That night I had glimpsed something beyond normal understanding, something patient and observant, lying in wait on roads that most people would never dare to travel. I still think about that night. Sometimes, when I drive alone on back roads far from town, I catch myself scanning the foggy tree line, half expecting to see the faint silhouette again, waiting just at the edge of the headlights. It's a quiet terror, not loud or immediate, but insidious, a sensation that you are never truly alone on these old Appalachian roads. Even now, I cannot drive that hollow stretch without feeling the presence of those unseen watchers, the cold pulse of anticipation in the mist, and the memory of eyes tracking me from the gray. The fog is deceptive. It softens edges, it hides shapes, it turns familiar terrain into a place that feels wrong. That night, I learned that the Appalachians hold their secrets close, that some roads, some hollows, are better left untraveled. The forest is patient and it waits, and sometimes it lets you see just enough to know that it is there, watching, waiting, and remembering. I have told almost no one about the figure in the mist, the swing set swaying with no wind, the faint tracks that led me into the clearing. The memory is mine alone, and even recounting it now, I feel that tight knot in my stomach, that prickling awareness of being observed. And I know that night has changed me in ways I cannot explain, even in daylight. When I drive near similar roads, my eyes wander to fog that gathers in hollows and low valleys, my mind automatically scanning for movement, for figures. The fear is subtle but persistent, a quiet undercurrent to the everyday. I can feel it in the back of my mind constantly, like a pulse I cannot turn off, reminding me of the night when the fog rolled in, thick and unrelenting, and I realized I was never alone. Whatever watched me that night, it did not leave a trace, did not follow in obvious ways, yet its presence was undeniable. And sometimes, in the corner of my vision, I swear I can still see it. The figure waiting silently, patient, a part of the fog itself, just beyond the reach of light, just beyond understanding. We were already on edge by the time we spotted the gas station, deep in the heart of the mountains where the road narrowed and the trees pressed close like silent sentinels. It looked like it hadn't been open for decades, the kind of place that belonged in a photograph from another time. The paint was peeling, the pumps rusted through, and the overhead lights flickered weakly, casting long, wavering shadows across the cracked concrete. The smell hit us first, the sharp, pungent odor of old gasoline, dust, and something sour, like mildew, hiding beneath the grime. We slowed the car, unsure if we should stop, but necessity won out. We were low on fuel and miles from the last town, and the idea of driving on empty into a forested abyss was worse than stopping at a place that felt wrong from the moment we laid eyes on it. I was the first out of the car, the gravel crunching under my boots, and I could hear my friends muttering behind me, half joking, half nervous. The flickering lights overhead made the place look alive in a sinister way, like the shadows were breathing. I walked to the pumps, intending to start filling up, and the silence pressed down on me. There was no sound except the hum of the faulty lights and the occasional drip of water from the sagging roof. I took a deep breath and stepped toward the small building, hoping to pay and be gone quickly. The door was heavy and it groaned as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the floor littered with bits of paper and debris. The register sat on the counter, untouched and coated in years of grime. It looked like it hadn't been used in decades, yet the drawers were closed tightly, almost intentionally. I called out, trying to see if anyone was there. There was no reply, just the echo of my own voice bouncing against the walls. I stepped further inside, the cold concrete sending chills up my spine, and that's when I heard it, a soft shuffle of footsteps behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, but no one was there. The shadows stretched and twisted on the walls, longer and darker than they should have been, bending unnaturally around corners, pooling in the edges of the room. I felt a cold draft brush the back of my neck and a shiver ran down my spine. My rational mind struggled to explain it. Maybe the wind, maybe an animal hiding somewhere. But something about the way the shadows moved felt deliberate, like they were aware of me. Watching, panic rising, I bolted back outside. The door slamming shut behind me with a force that made me jump. My friends were already out of the car, frozen in place, staring at the far edge of the lot. I followed their gaze and saw it. A car, old and rusted, sitting idly on the cracked asphalt, engine running, yet with no driver. The headlights glared weakly through the dim light, but the interior was empty. I squinted, straining to see if someone was hiding inside, waiting to jump out, but there was no one. A gnawing unease settled in my stomach, a sense that this was not a trick of the eye or a malfunctioning engine. It was deliberate, a silent statement that we were intruding somewhere we didn't belong. We climbed back into our car without a word, the engine starting with a reluctant cough. As we pulled away, I kept glancing back at the gas station, the old pumps, the shadowed building. But the moment we reached the fog that had been rolling in from the valley, it was gone. Vanished entirely as if it had never existed, leaving only the gray mist and the forest pressing against the road. I tried to speak, to ask my friends if they had seen it too, but their faces were pale, eyes wide, mirroring the same disbelief I felt. Silence hung between us like a heavy curtain, unbroken except for the low hum of the engine and the crunch of tires on gravel. The road stretched ahead, winding through dense trees, and every bend made me glance over my shoulder. The memory of the gas station clung to me, vivid and unsettling, the smell of gasoline, the creaking door, the shadows stretching unnaturally, the footsteps that hadn't been there, and the car that had no driver. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps it had been a trick of the light, a mirage in the fog, or a forgotten relic of some long-abandoned service station. But the precision of it, the timing, the movement, the deliberate emptiness, felt too calculated to dismiss. That night I realized that some places in the Appalachians are not just abandoned, they are alive in a way that doesn't obey reason or expectation. For days afterward, I couldn't shake the memory. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the dimly lit interior of that gas station, the flickering lights casting shadows that seemed to pulse with intent. I could hear the soft shuffle of footsteps behind me, feel the cold draft against my neck, and sense the car idling at the edge of the lot, silent but waiting. I began to notice it in other places too. Abandoned buildings, roadside clearings, old cabins, they all seemed to hold a residue of something patient and watchful. The mountains aren't silent as most people think. They remember. They mark the trespassers, even months later. Whenever I drive through foggy stretches of road deep in the woods, I feel it again, a presence lingering just beyond the edge of perception, the weight of unseen eyes, and the unsettling notion that what you see, or think you see, is only part of the truth. I cannot tell if what I experienced was a hallucination fueled by exhaustion and isolation, or if the gas station had truly existed in some liminal space between memory and reality. But the fear it left behind is unmistakable, solid and tangible, pressing against my chest in the quiet moments when I am alone. I have never returned to that road. I have never tried to find the gas station again, even out of curiosity. The fog seems to carry a warning, and the mountains themselves seem to hum with the knowledge that some things are meant to be left unseen. That night changed me. It gave me an understanding of the Appalachians I can't fully describe. The forests and valleys hold more than wildlife and trees. They hold memories, intentions, and perhaps even grudges. They have a patience that humbles you, and when they choose to reveal something, even briefly, it is not for your benefit, even in bright daylight. When I pass by old roadside structures, I feel the lingering echo of that night. I imagine the shadows stretching unnaturally, the footsteps following silently, the car at the edge of the lot waiting. I hear the faint whisper of wind through cracks in the boards, and I wonder if somewhere that gas station still exists, half hidden in fog, patient and watching, waiting for the next traveler who strays too far into the mountains. And in my chest, I carry a constant, quiet dread, a reminder that the Appalachians are not simply a backdrop for human stories. They are active participants in their own history, silent witnesses and sometimes silent predators. Even now, I can close my eyes and see the flickering lights, smell the dust and gasoline, and feel the cold draft brush against my neck. I can hear the faint rumble of an engine idling without a driver, see the shadows on the walls stretching impossibly long. And I know that the fear I felt was not just imagination. It was real, grounded in the mountains themselves, and it lingers, patient and unrelenting, like a shadow at the edge of perception, reminding me that some places are never meant to be fully known. I was driving through the pines that night, the kind of stretch where the trees press close to the road and the world feels smaller, heavier, as if the forest itself is leaning in to watch you. The headlights of my car cut a narrow tunnel through the darkness, illuminating the rough asphalt and the sharp edges of the underbrush that edged the shoulder. The air was damp, filled with the scent of pine needles, wet soil, and the faint tang of decay. Every sound seemed amplified. The wind through the branches, the occasional snap of a twig, the distant call of an unseen bird. But nothing prepared me for what I saw coming down the opposite lane. Headlights appeared suddenly, blinding me for a second, moving fast and erratically, swerving dangerously close to the shoulder before jerking back into the lane. My stomach dropped and I slowed, unsure whether to pull over or keep moving. That's when I noticed the figure standing between the trees on my side of the road. At first I thought it was someone stranded, a hitchhiker waiting for a ride. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized something was wrong. Their stance was unnatural, almost jagged, as if the limbs were bent in ways they shouldn't be. The figure didn't sway with the wind or shift weight naturally. It just stared at me, an intensity in the eyes that made my skin crawl, a kind of knowing that no human should possess. I pressed the accelerator, my heart hammering, wanting to drive past them as quickly as possible. But even as I did, a part of me couldn't look away. There was something deliberate in their posture, a focus that suggested they were waiting, not lost, not confused, but aware. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, and I did, glancing in my mirror as I drove. For a moment, the figure was gone, vanished into the dark undergrowth. But the road ahead was different. The trees seemed closer, the tunnel narrower, the path winding in ways it hadn't before. My chest tightened, and a wave of panic set in. It was as if the forest itself had shifted, bending to contain me. For miles I drove like a man possessed, eyes darting to every shadow, scanning the edges of the forest for movement. The headlights that had been so bright in the distance now seemed to glow in the darkness behind me, though there was no sound of a car following. Each bend in the road brought the sense that something could step out at any moment, and the weight of the unseen pressed on me. I imagined figures among the trees, watching, shifting, waiting. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves made me flinch, and I caught myself gripping the wheel until my knuckles ached, willing the forest to release me from its pressure. The shapes of the trees grew more twisted, more oppressive, the closer I drove to where I thought the forest would thin. Shadows pooled unnaturally along the road, like dark water collecting in the cracks of the asphalt. I could feel the figure's gaze lingering in the back of my mind, though I had no way to see it. The highway that should have appeared eventually still seemed miles away, distant and intangible. The air felt heavier, damp and thick, pressing against my face as if trying to slow me down. Every instinct I had told me to stop, to breathe, to look around, but stopping felt like surrendering to whatever had claimed that stretch of pines. Somewhere along the way, I caught a glimpse of movement on the right, a fleeting shift in the underbrush that made me jerk the wheel instinctively. Nothing was there, and yet I knew I had seen something, a shadow too precise to be a trick of the light. My imagination ran wild, but I could not dismiss it. The forest had rules, and I had broken them by driving into it at night, alone. The headlights from the oncoming car were gone now, replaced by the lingering sense of observation, a presence that moved just at the edge of my vision. Every time I glanced in my mirror, I half expected to see that impossible figure re-emerging, and the thought made my stomach churn. Finally, after what felt like hours, the trees opened up, and I recognized a familiar stretch of highway. Relief washed over me, but it was shallow and fleeting. The forest behind me still seemed alive, as if it had released me reluctantly, and the memory of the headlights, of that figure, lingered like smoke in my chest. The way it had moved or not moved, the unnatural alignment of its body, the intensity in its eyes, I could not forget it, could not rationalize it away. It had been something human in shape, but the essence of it was something else entirely. Something I could not name or understand, even now. I drive carefully on those back roads, the memory of that night etched into my mind. Shadows in the trees, the shapes of branches, the way the light falls on the forest floor, all trigger the old fear, the quiet sense of being watched. I sometimes see shapes in the corner of my vision, fleeting and impossible, and I wonder if the figure is still there, patient and waiting, or if it was only a messenger of the forest's will, a reminder that the woods have rules I do not understand. The terror that night was not loud. It did not scream or lunge. It crept along the edges of perception, leaving me uncertain, trembling, hyper-aware. I could feel the pines closing in around me, a pressure that was physical and psychological, the oppressive weight of a living forest intent on making me know my place. Even as I reached safety, even under the bright lights of civilization, that sense of observation remained quiet and insistent, a shadow behind my thoughts. Sometimes, in dreams, I am back on that road, headlights cutting through the dark, the twisted figure stepping from the trees. I wake in a cold sweat, pulse racing, and for a moment, the forest seems to stretch across my bedroom, the shadows alive. The memory is so vivid, so precise, that it is as if it could happen again at any moment. I have told few people, because it sounds impossible, unbelievable, and yet the fear I felt was real, raw, and undeniable. The Appalachians are not forgiving to those who wander without caution, and some roads carry the weight of memory, of observation, of things that should not be seen. That night I understood the truth of it. The forest is patient. It waits. It watches. And sometimes, for reasons we cannot comprehend, it allows us a glimpse of the impossible, leaving us forever changed, never fully free of what we have seen. Even years later, driving near the same stretch of road, I catch myself scanning the trees, noting the shapes of the shadows, feeling the pressure of something unseen in the periphery of my vision. The fear is quiet now, but persistent, a shadow that never entirely leaves. I cannot explain what I saw. I do not know if anyone else could see it, or if it was unique to that night, that stretch of highway, and my presence in it. All I know is that the memory remains, alive and insistent, a reminder that the forest holds more than trees and wildlife. It holds rules and watchers, and moments that can bend reality just enough to leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the world. That night, the headlights in the pines showed me something impossible, something that has never left me. A figure neither wholly human nor completely alien, standing in judgment or perhaps in welcome. I will never drive that road at night again. The memory of that figure, of the forest's oppressive attention, lingers like smoke in my mind, and every time I recall it, I feel the same tight knot in my chest, the same pull of fear that reminds me some roads are better left alone, and some forests better left unexplored. We had heard the stories about Devil's Bridge for years, tales whispered around campfires. Rumors spread by local kids about the rickety old span that arched precariously over a deep gorge somewhere in the heart of the Appalachians. They said people who crossed it after dark sometimes didn't come back, that the bridge itself had a memory, a will, and that it favored the careless or the curious with vanishings that were never explained. I had dismissed those stories as small-town superstition, the kind of folklore that builds character and scares away the timid. That is, until the night we drove there when the fog rolled in thick and heavy, hugging the ground and turning the gorge below into a gray void. The road that led to the bridge was narrow and winding, twisting around cliffs and trees so close you could almost touch them as you drove past. The fog muffled everything, the sound of the car's tires on the asphalt, the wind, even our own voices as we whispered nervously to each other. I could feel the tension in the car growing, a quiet dread that seemed to thrum with every turn of the wheels. When we finally reached the bridge, it looked even worse than I had imagined. The wood planks were warped and blackened with age, the iron supports rusted through in places, creaking under their own weight. Our headlights illuminated the beginning of the span, the glow bouncing off the fog and giving the bridge an almost spectral presence. We hesitated. My friends murmured doubts, nervously joking to mask the fear curling in their chests, but I could see it there in their eyes. I swallowed hard and drove forward. The moment the tires touched the first planks, the bridge groaned under our weight. It wasn't just the sound of old wood settling, it was the kind of noise that carries intention, that seems to resent being disturbed. The fog below clung to the gorge like a living thing, and I thought I saw shapes moving in it, shadows that twisted against the faint current of the river beneath us. My stomach churned and I caught myself gripping the wheel tightly, knuckles white. Halfway across, the engine sputtered and died. The car shuddered, the headlights dimming as the fog closed in, swallowing everything except the narrow line of the bridge beneath us. The air became still, pressing down from all directions. My friends froze in their seats, wide-eyed, silent. That's when I heard it. Low, guttural whispering, almost beneath the level of hearing, coming from directly below the bridge. I could feel it more than hear it, a vibration in the air, the kind of sound that crawls under your skin and lodges in your chest. Panic surged, a cold and instant realization that we were not alone, and that whatever was down there had noticed us. I jumped out, trembling, hoping to push the car free from the sagging planks, to get it moving before the bridge decided it was done with us. That's when I saw them, pale figures crouched at the edge of the gorge, their forms hunched and unnatural, staring up at us with empty, hollow eyes that reflected the dim light in a way that made my stomach drop. They didn't move like humans should, their limbs bent in ways that were almost grotesque, yet they were deliberate, aware, and patient. My friends called my name, voices trembling, urging me back into the car, but it was impossible to tear my gaze from them. The bridge groaned again, a long, almost living sound, as if it were reacting to our presence, warning us, testing us. I pushed the car with every ounce of strength I had, but it felt heavier with each plank, as though the bridge itself were resisting, holding us in place. The whispering grew louder, more distinct, though the words were unintelligible, guttural syllables that seemed designed to unsettle rather than communicate. My hair stood on end and a cold sweat ran down my back. The fog swirled below, hiding the depth of the gorge, and I couldn't see where the shapes ended or the water began. Finally, with a surge of adrenaline and sheer desperation, the car lurched forward, crossing the midpoint of the bridge. The whispering seemed to retreat, fading into a low hum, but the figures at the edge remained, crouched and still, watching. I glanced back briefly, heart hammering, and caught a fleeting reflection in the fog. The bridge itself seemed to sigh, the planks settling and creaking in a way that felt like exhalation. It was as if the structure had been holding its breath all night, waiting for trespassers to challenge it. By the time we reached the far side, the fog had begun to lift slightly, revealing the road winding back into the trees. Relief washed over us, but it was shallow, almost bitter. We did not speak as we drove, each of us lost in the private terror of what we had seen. The hollow eyes, the unnatural posture, the whispering. It followed us in memory, crawling into the spaces between rational thought, leaving us uneasy and hyper-aware. That night taught me a lesson the legends had only hinted at. Some places in the Appalachians are alive with a will of their own, and the stories are not merely tales, they are warnings. even weeks later. I couldn't shake the image of the pale figures crouched at the gorge, nor the sound of the bridge groaning like an old beast under our weight. Every time I drive near a long, narrow bridge or through a stretch of forest where the fog gathers thick and low, I can feel the memory creeping back, a subtle pressure at the edges of my awareness. The bridge, the gorge, the figures. They were part of the forest's memory now, and I knew I had been marked by it in some small, intangible way. The Appalachians are patient, and the mountains remember. I cannot explain what happened that night in terms that make sense, nor can I offer any reassurance that such places are safe. Devil's Bridge still exists, though perhaps only in the fog, the stories, and the memory of those who have dared to cross it after dark. I can see it clearly in my mind, the narrow wooden planks, the pale figures crouched at the edges, the whispering rising from the gorge below, and the bridge itself, almost alive, sighing as if relieved to see us depart. I never returned to that road. I never spoke much of it, not because I wanted to hide it, but because the memory carries its own weight, one that cannot be shared without the fear returning in full force. The fog, the whispering, the cold, empty eyes, they are a part of the Appalachians, and once you glimpse them, even briefly, the impression lingers, a quiet dread that never fully leaves. Even now I close my eyes and see the bridge stretching over the gorge, feel the fog pressing in and hear the low, guttural murmur that seemed to rise from the very bones of the mountains. Some nights, I wake with the same heavy breath, heart racing, and for a moment, I am back there, half on the bridge, half in the car, with the figures watching silently from the fog. And I know without any doubt that Devil's Bridge is more than wood and nails. It is memory, warning and witness, patient and unyielding, a presence that marks the living and leaves a quiet, lingering terror in its wake. The creek had seemed so peaceful in the daylight, a ribbon of water winding through the forest, sunlight glinting off its ripples, and the sound of birdsong filling the air. It had drawn us in, promising a quiet night away from town, away from traffic and responsibilities. We set up our tents along the bank, laughed around the campfire, and let ourselves sink into the comfort of isolation. The water babbled soothingly, and I remember thinking that if all nights could be like this, the forest wouldn't seem so intimidating. But as the sun dipped behind the ridges, shadows stretched long across the trees, and the forest shifted subtly. Something in the air changed, a stillness that carried weight and made the laughter from our fire feel hollow. I was the first to wake. At first I thought it was the creek itself, murmuring as it wound through the rocks, but the sound was different. It was soft, almost imperceptible at first, but unmistakably voices. Low whispers carried on the wind, coming from the trees surrounding our campsite. I strained my ears, trying to make sense of them, and then I realized they weren't random words. They were calling my name, each syllable deliberate, as if someone, or something, knew exactly where I was. I shook my head, telling myself I was imagining it. That exhaustion and the strange isolation of the forest were playing tricks on me. But the whispers grew louder, clearer, beckoning me into the shadows beyond the firelight. I sat up in my sleeping bag, heart pounding, and listened. Footsteps crunched softly around the tent, circling, never quite close enough to see, yet always present. I whispered to my friends, but they were still asleep, oblivious to the sounds, and I felt an icy loneliness settle over me. Each step was careful, deliberate, not like the shuffle of an animal, but human in rhythm and yet not. Something about the cadence was wrong, too slow, too precise, like a predator testing its prey. I could hear breaths now, shallow and soft, and I dared not move for fear of drawing attention. Then one of my friends stirred, rubbing his eyes, and moments later, he was gone. The tent flaps moved with no wind, and when he returned minutes later, his face was pale, expression vacant, silent. He did not speak of where he had gone or what he had seen, but I could see the fear lingering in his eyes, the same kind of dread that had lodged in my chest the moment the whispers began. We tried to convince ourselves it was a prank, that our minds were playing tricks in the dark, but the forest would not allow such rationality. Every shadow seemed to lean closer, every rustle of leaves a whisper carrying words just beyond comprehension. Morning came, but it did little to ease the tension. We packed up silently, the weight of the previous night heavy on all of us. Even as the sun climbed higher, the forest retained a quiet menace. The sense that we had been watched, that something had passed between the trees while we slept. As we drove away, the creek receded into the distance, its gentle daylight charm a cruel mockery of what we had endured. But something strange happened. In every mirror, in every reflective surface of the car, the creek appeared again. Always close, always present, as if it had followed us from the campsite. I would glance quickly, heart racing, only to see it linger just beyond the edges of reflection, bending the line between reality and memory. The whispers, too, seemed to follow. I could hear faint echoes in my mind, like a shadow of the voices from the night, carried in silence but precise enough to remind me of what had happened. I could never shake the sensation of movement around the tent, the feeling of being circled, tested, marked. Even in my own bedroom, under the safety of my roof and walls, I would hear the faint rustle of leaves, the soft sigh of water, and the impossibly close whisper of my name. The memory was persistent, invading quiet moments, reminding me that what we had experienced was not simply a dream or a trick of the mind. The forest itself seemed to hold the memory of that night. I have returned to the road many times, sometimes near the creek, and each time it feels closer than it should, more immediate, more aware. Shadows bend unnaturally near its banks, the rustle of trees and underbrush forming patterns that suggest movement, patience, and intent. The whispers remain, faint but distinct, carrying that same beckoning tone that drew me from my sleeping bag in the dead of night. It is as though the creek and the forest around it remember who passed through and wait silently for those who return. Even when I attempt to speak about the night, the words feel inadequate. There is a weight to memory, to presence, that defies description. The isolation of the Appalachian forest is not just in its geography, it is in its patience, its awareness, its ability to turn a simple campsite by a creek into a place of quiet terror. The voices, the footsteps, the pallor of my friend, all linger in my mind like a physical pressure, impossible to shake or explain. The night left an imprint that no daylight could wash away. I have never camped near that creek again. I cannot return to that place, not for curiosity, not for reassurance. The whispers, the movement, the awareness, they follow me even now, reminding me of the night when the inviting creek turned sinister, when the forest revealed its patience and its watchfulness, and when I understood that some places in the Appalachians are not just isolated, they are alive in ways that we are neither meant to see nor comprehend fully. The gravel road stretched before me like a ribbon of gray through the forest, long, straight, and deceptively quiet. The kind of road that looks empty and harmless, but carries its own weight in the night, the way the trees press close, the way shadows stretch unnaturally under my headlights, the way the forest seems to listen. It was late, later than I usually drive, and the isolation weighed on me, a creeping pressure that made every sound sharper, every snap of twig or rustle of leaves send my pulse jumping. I had the windows cracked slightly, the cold night air bringing the scent of pine and wet earth, and the hum of the engine was the only comfort. Or so I thought. It started subtly, a faint crunching in the gravel behind me. At first I dismissed it. Perhaps another car, a distant vehicle making its way along the hollows, or an animal skittering across the side of the road. But the sound didn't fade. It grew louder, steady, precise, keeping pace with my own tires. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing. Just the dark, the narrow stretch of gravel disappearing behind me, no headlights, no sign of another car. My stomach tightened, and a cold sweat broke across my forehead. The crunching stayed, relentless, echoing in a way that felt almost deliberate, like someone, or something, was testing me, tracing me along the length of the road. I tried to accelerate, to put distance between myself and the sound, but it matched my speed perfectly, step for step, echoing in the hollows and bouncing off the trees. Panic began to rise, slow and insidious, as I realized I wasn't imagining it. Whatever it was patient and deliberate, and it was following me. I forced myself to focus on the road ahead, straining to see anything beyond the pools of light cast by my headlights. That's when I caught glimpses in the shadows, figures darting between the trees, sometimes human-shaped, sometimes blurred, distorted. They moved with a strange precision, too quick, too deliberate to be ordinary people, and yet unmistakably alive in some sense. I swerved slightly, heart hammering, every nerve on fire, and the noise behind me seemed to grow, matching the rhythm of my fear. Every mile felt stretched, as though the road itself had been extended to test me. The forest closed in tighter, the darkness thickening with each bend. The crunching was constant, echoing in my chest, in my ears, in the very bones of my spine. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles ached, every instinct screaming to look over my shoulder, to understand, to confront what was following. But terror rooted me in place. Even when I dared a glance, the road was empty, shadows deep and impenetrable, and the figures disappeared into the black between trees. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was another vehicle I couldn't see. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe the isolation and the fatigue were playing tricks on me. But rationality fell apart as the crunching persisted, unwavering, growing louder as I took a sharp bend that should have broken the line of sound. The figures reappeared fleetingly, shapes in the darkness, darting from tree to tree, always just beyond comprehension. The sense of being watched, of being stalked along that long gravel stretch, was suffocating, and I could feel my pulse thrumming in time with the relentless sound behind me. At some point, fear took over entirely. I pushed the car faster, tires throwing gravel behind me, engine screaming, headlights cutting through the night. The shadows seemed to bend with me, stretching unnaturally along the roadside, and the crunching followed without pause, echoing endlessly. I couldn't tell if I was leaving it behind or if it simply persisted, following in some parallel reality. Every bend, every hollow, every stretch of open forest seemed designed to trap me, to heighten the terror of the pursuit. Hours, or maybe minutes. Time lost all meaning, passed in a blur of speed, shadows, and sound. The forest became a cage, the gravel road a ribbon of fear winding through it, and the crunching persisted, an almost sentient rhythm that refused to relent. My mind raced, flipping between denial and horror, my imagination conjuring the figures in more grotesque and impossible forms with every second. Yet I couldn't deny the reality of it. The sound matched my speed, kept pace with me, and the glimpses in the trees were unmistakable. Finally, the road curved and widened, and the dark, suffocating canopy of the forest gave way to the faint glow of the highway ahead. Relief surged, heavy and desperate, but even as I merged onto the familiar asphalt, the crunching didn't vanish immediately. It lingered in my mind, a phantom sound that chased me beyond the gravel road and into the emptier stretches of night. The figures, fleeting though they were, remained etched in memory, impossible to forget. Even in well-lit towns with cars and people around, the memory of those shadows and the unrelenting sound stayed with me, a constant reminder of the encounter. Days later, I could still hear it. A soft crunch beneath my tires, faint but precise whenever I thought of that road. It wasn't just memory. It was a presence, patient and lingering, a reminder that some roads are better left untraveled. The gravel, the forest, the figures, they were all a part of it, stitched into the hollows of my mind, echoing in the quiet moments, in reflections of headlights and the rhythm of passing tires. The Appalachians, I realized, are not just a landscape of trees and hills. They are a memory, a witness, and sometimes a predator. Even now, when I drive alone late at night, my ears catch the faintest crunch behind me. My eyes flicker to shadows in the corners of the road, and my pulse hammers as if I am still on that endless stretch of gravel. The fear has softened, become quieter, but it never leaves entirely. That road marked me, a lesson written in sound and shadow, teaching me that the familiar can turn threatening in an instant, that isolation has a voice, and that the hollows of Appalachia hold more than trees and quiet. They hold patience, presence, and an insistence that some paths are not meant for the living. We thought we were being clever, cutting through a narrow hollow to save time on the way back from the mountains. At first, the road seemed ordinary enough, dirt and gravel winding through the trees, sunlight fading into dusk. But soon it became clear that this shortcut was no ordinary path. The road twisted unnaturally, bends appearing where there shouldn't have been any, each curve tighter than the last. The trees leaned closer with every mile, trunks thick and gnarled, branches clawing toward the car as if they were alive, determined to trap us in their shadowed grasp. I remember a low, pressing sense of unease settling over me, a weight in the air that made every breath feel laborious. My friends laughed nervously at first, trying to cut the tension with jokes. But the laughter faltered as the shadows deepened and the forest seemed to close in around us. As we drove, I noticed strange markings etched into the rocks and the bark of the trees. They were symbols I didn't recognize, geometric shapes, spirals, and lines that seemed to shift when I looked away. At first, I thought perhaps local kids had carved them, playing some prank, but the sheer number and their precision felt deliberate, almost ritualistic. My skin prickled with the certainty that someone, or something, had left them as a warning. I tried to shake the feeling, convincing myself that the forest was just old and our imaginations were running wild. But the deeper we went, the more impossible it became to ignore the sense of being observed. Shadows moved at the edges of our vision, darting between trees faster than any human could manage, vanishing when I tried to focus on them. Each time I blinked, the movement was gone, leaving only the rustling of leaves and the distorted outlines of the hollow. I felt eyes on us, invisible but heavy, tracking every motion of the car as we twisted further into the narrowing path. My hands gripped the wheel tightly, knuckles white, every instinct screaming that this was a mistake, that we had stumbled into something that did not want to be found. Then the car shuddered and died, the engine coughing its last breath in the middle of the hollow. The headlights dimmed, leaving us in near-complete darkness, the only light coming from the faint glow of the fading sky beyond the tree line. We tried to restart it, but it was no use. The air around us thickened suddenly, almost tangible, pressing down on our shoulders, our chests, constricting our breathing. Panic set in as we realized we were completely at the mercy of whatever occupied the hollow. It started with whispers, soft at first, indistinct, coming from all directions. They were guttural, almost musical, words I couldn't understand but felt deep in my bones. They encircled us, echoing from nowhere, and there was no way to locate their source. My friends clutched each other, their faces pale, eyes wide as the voices grew louder, closer, yet still impossibly distant. The shadows we had glimpsed earlier seemed to creep nearer, coalescing in the periphery of our vision. Each movement felt deliberate and hungry, as if the hollow itself had become a predator and we its prey. We stepped out of the car, fear rooting us in place for a heartbeat, then adrenaline taking over as we bolted, racing back to the vehicle. Every crack of a branch underfoot sounded like an alarm. Every gust of wind through the trees carried the suggestion of movement. The hollow seemed to stretch endlessly, the road bending and twisting further than it should have, disorienting us. I could feel the presence all around, patient and silent until we stirred, then aggressive, pressing against us with unseen hands. Finally, we piled into the car, slamming the doors, and miraculously the engine roared to life. The headlights cut through the blackened forest, and we drove as fast as we could, the hollow stretching behind us in unnatural ways. When we emerged back onto the wider, familiar road, the sense of immediate danger ebbed slightly, but the lingering impression of eyes watching, of something stalking us through the trees, never left. Even hours later, miles away, I could still feel the oppressive weight of the hollow, hear faint whispers at the edge of hearing, and catch glimpses of shadows moving where there should be nothing. That night left a mark deeper than any cut or bruise could. The hollow had tested us, reminding me that the Appalachian wilderness is patient, observant, and sometimes far more intelligent than we want to believe. I have never taken that shortcut again. I avoid narrow hollows whenever I can, even during the daylight, because the memory lingers, not just in my mind but in my senses. Shadows seem to shift unnaturally in similar terrain. The wind carries whispers that echo too clearly, and the air feels heavier, as if watching, remembering, waiting. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can feel the hollow pressing in, the thick air, the whispers circling, the unseen eyes tracking every movement. I know that the symbols on the trees and rocks were not just decoration. They were warnings, markers of territory, or perhaps remnants of those who had been swallowed by the hollow before us. And the forest remembers. It never forgets. We escaped that night, but the memory is relentless. A shadow in my chest that grows whenever I recall the narrow, twisted road, the impossible shapes at the edges of vision, and the feeling that the hollow is always just beyond, patient, waiting, and quietly hungry.